I have a confession to make. I've got this weakness for weird handhelds. Show me something that looks different, promises to do something unique, and costs less than therapy, whilst providing a similar level of emotional release, and I'm immediately interested. So when I first saw the MagicX Zero 40 with its bizarre vertical screen and sub $100 price tag, my first thought was, but then reality set in, as it often tends to do, and I found myself asking some rather uncomfortable questions. The most obvious one being, why buy this when you can get a proper 2DS for the same money? I went from loving this thing to wanting to love this thing to thinking it was completely pointless to eventually buying one anyway because apparently I'm incapable of financial management. So join me on this roller coaster ride as we figure out where the MagicX Zero 40 lies. Is it a hidden gem or a high-tech pet rock? Imagine somebody took a Nintendo 2DS, put it on a strict diet of vertical arcade games for 6 months, and then sent it to a minimalist design retreat to achieve inner peace. The result is this wonderfully odd device that looks like it was designed by somebody who thought what gaming really needs is a higher centre of gravity. The first thing that you'll notice is that the pictures don't do it justice. It's surprisingly small in person. And what's in the box? Well, don't get too excited. You'll get a single USB-C to USB-A charging cable, and that's your lot. Which is kind of disappointing when you can get cheaper things that come with more stuff, even if you just throw that stuff in a bin. Under the hood, it's running an all-winner 133P chipset with 2 GB of RAM, and it's got both Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connectivity. Though don't expect to do any game streaming with this, it's good enough for file transfers, and that's about it. In the hand, it's surprisingly comfortable. The plastic feels solid, the curves fit well, and the weight is light but balanced. In all honesty, I was expecting this to be heavier. Every time I pick it up, I expect it to be heavier, and I'm currently undecided as to whether that's a good or a bad thing. The face buttons have an almost silent, satisfying click, which is great if you're a considerate nighttime gamer. The single Hall effect analog stick is a miracle at this price point. It's wonderfully smooth and it really elevates the entire experience. The D-pad, however, well, that's where people seem to be divided on this. Some people have said it's perfectly fine. For me, it kind of let the whole thing down. You'll be making a simple jump in a platformer, and you'll inexplicably add a diagonal input at the last moment, sending you neatly off the ledge that you were trying to get to in the first place. It kind of operates on this flawed logic that it knows where you're really trying to go, and it wants to help you get there as quickly as possible. A tour of the device reveals a very practical setup. Up top, a dedicated USB-C port for charging, another for OTG peripherals and connecting to a computer. It's topped off with a 35mm headphone jack, and on the side you've got dual micro SD cards, one for the Android operating system and the games that come with the device, and the other for your own SD card if you want to use one. And it's nice to see that they usually ship with a quality card from either Kioxia or SanDisk. Mine came with the SanDisk, as all of the early models will. A quick word of advice here. Back up your OS card as soon as you get it. What you'll want to do with this one, plug it in to your computer using the OTG port and transfer everything from the internal storage to somewhere safe. This machine comes with much better cards than most, but they're not without flaws. Another issue I had was with the 2-card setup, but I'll get to that a little bit later on. In terms of battery life, you can expect between 4 to 6 hours of gameplay, depending on what system you're running. But all of this hardware serves one primary purpose: Nintendo DS Emulation. It actually comes with a second DS emulator in addition to Drastic, but there's really no need to bother with it. Drastic runs everything better, so I'd suggest just stick with that. And whilst one of the selling points is that it's all set up for you, that's not 100% true. For some reason, an FPS counter is on by default in every emulator, which I found really annoying because you've got to go in and turn it off for each system. It makes the device feel a little less ready to go than advertised. And I should say, I think that FPS counters should be for enthusiasts to turn on rather than lay people to turn off. But this is where things get complicated, because this device doesn't exist in a vacuum. A second-hand Nintendo DS will cost you about the same as this device. The original 2DS, only a fractionally more, and it gives you access to a big chunk of the incredible 3DS library. Let's be crystal clear here. This device is not powerful enough to handle Nintendo 3DS emulation, so don't even go there. You might think that this was a slam dunk for Nintendo then, until you see the two side by side. The Zero 40's modern IPS screen is vastly superior. I will say, my unit arrived with the brightness set to about 38%, which made the whole thing look really dull. And that, you can turn that up. Be sure to check that, because when it's bright and illuminated, it's much better than a lot of the screens out there. It's not quite as nice as the ones you'll find in the Anbernic devices, but it is miles better than the original hardware. The 2DS, even the 2DS XL, which I've got here, look washed out in comparison. The higher resolution screens on the 2DS XL even make the original DS games look a bit fuzzy, because it's not really upscaling them, it's just expanding them. And if you do play DS games at native resolution on a 3DS model, you get a lot of black borders around the edge. It's not a problem, but a lot of people don't like that, and you don't have to deal with it on the Zero 40. But there's also another competitor in this price bracket, the Anbernic Cube XX. The Cube XX's 1x1 screen handles the stacked DS layout really well. It's a clean presentation. In terms of size, the DS screen on the XX are about 36mm each, whilst the Zero 40, they're 39mm. And it sounds like that could make a huge difference, but in reality, you don't notice it. But critically, the Cube XX has no touchscreen. Stylus support relies on using the left analog stick, and that's a non-starter for many. And this is where we see the Zero 40's single biggest advantage in this price range, its touchscreen. However, the touchscreen itself feels a little plasticky, and it can be a tad unresponsive, especially with the stylus. Perhaps I've just got used to more premium touch devices over the years. I don't know. It is functional, but not as high quality as the screens on the more expensive Anbernic devices. I'm coming back to Anbernic time and again because they really are a tough act to follow, especially in this price bracket. Where the Zero 40 can't compare, however, is with other retro systems, which the 1x1 screen of the Cube XX just handles better. And if you need more power from your 1x1 device, you can have the Anbernic RG Cube, the original one. The RG Cube is nearly double the price of the Zero 40, but for that you get a much more powerful chip, some 3DS, some PS2, and it does have that touchscreen. Objectively, the RG Cube is the better do-everything device. But for half the price, the Zero 40's dedicated vertical layout offers a more authentic DS experience. But what does that experience actually feel like? A game like Professor Layton is perfect. The layout feels native, it plays really well. In a platformer like Sonic Rush, I found the imprecise D-pad can still be a real source of frustration. And for a touch-heavy game like Picross DS, the experience is crippled unless you get that capacitive stylus. For a dynamic device that's so DS-centric, I'm baffled as to why they just didn't put one of these in the box in the first place. Due to the small screen size and the nature of these games, you'll absolutely want to purchase a stylus for better precision. It seems like such a strange omission. Another omission is the lack of microphone, which means that games that rely on voice command, like parts of Nintendogs, they simply won't work as Nintended. Sorry, it's quite a long time since I've done a joke. Of course, that vertical screen has another purpose as well. Tate mode. For anybody who loves vertical arcade games, especially shoot-'em-ups, this device is a dream. A game like 1942 fills the screen with glorious, vibrant action, a world away from the tiny letterbox window that you get on a standard widescreen handheld. The screen real estate here is about 70mm tall. Interestingly, the Cube XX actually gives you a slightly larger image at 72mm, so you could argue it's a better Tate experience on that device, but the Zero 40 is still superb. It's like the inverse of the DS emulation. One small annoyance, though, is that the included Tate game list doesn't have proper names, so you'll be guessing at what some of them are. But for many, the ability to play these types of game is going to be worth the price of admission alone. Now, underneath all of this is a build of Android running on a custom front end called the Dawn Launcher. The underlying operating system is Android 10, which is mostly hidden behind this launcher. I quite like it. Actually, I didn't see a need to change it, although I think custom firmwares are out there. But it does come with some drawbacks. The most important one is that there's no Google Play Store, which means that any game or app that requires Google Play services or logins, DRM, cloud saves, they simply will not run. The workaround is to sideload those apps that do not require Google services onto your device, or you can use the built-in browser, but a better method is to install the Aurora Store, an open source client that lets you access many apps from the Play Store library, as long as they don't have that pesky Google dependency. In practice, this means native vertical Android games like pinball apps work brilliantly, but if you try and launch a mainstream title like Genshin Impact, you'll be greeted with an error. But Android games play really well on this device as long as you don't choose the more resource-heavy ones. That still leaves you with a lot of games that work like a charm straight out of the box that were built for this vertical screen format to begin with. The 040 doesn't come with any games on the card other than the Tate and DS ones, but it's fairly easy to load your own ROMs if you want. You've got 13 gigabytes to play with on the internal card. It's enough for a small curated game list of titles that you'll want to swap out occasionally. In terms of other systems, once this can run them, you probably don't want to. A standard 4x3 system like the Genesis or PS1 or Dreamcast just feels too small on this screen. It's playable, but it's ever so small. Systems with a squarer aspect ratio, the Game Boy Color, they're actually pretty good and they fit really well. They feel natural to play. It should be noted that you can expand some 4x3 games using the emulator's aspect ratio setting. Switching a SNES game to 8x7, for instance, makes the image taller and a much better fit for the screen without any weird stretching. But don't even think about 16:9 widescreen content. And before you ask, turning the console sideways is a non-starter. The controls are so uncomfortable, and whilst you could attach a Bluetooth controller, that completely defeats the purpose of a pocketable device. I did mention that I'd come back to that second SD card. Here we are. I made a massive mistake when I was trying to set this up, and I wanted to make sure that you don't do the same. The system allows you to have more than one folder to store ROMs in. That's great because you can leave the ROMs alone that come with the original card and then insert a second card with your new ROMs on it. Here's how to set that up. Firstly, format your card as exFAT and then put it in the second card slot. Now, we're going to have to tell the device that we want to use that card to store games. So you navigate to Settings and then scroll down until you get to Select Game Library. Tapping on that will bring up a window with path 1 already inserted. That's the path to the current SD card. We'll leave that alone. If you don't see an Add button, move down on the D-pad until it appears. Highlight it and then press A. We then need to find the SD card, and when you do, you click on the Allow Game Access button underneath, and this is going to create a ROMs directory for you on that card. Turn off the machine, and then you can now take out the card, put it back in your computer, and load it with your games. You can scrape using the device, or you could copy scraped images that you've already got into the image folder within each of the system's folders. Do not create the ROMs folder first. This is the mistake that I made when I was trying to be clever. Follow those instructions and you'll be good to go. So, who is this actually for? Well, the MagicX 040 asks you to make a clear trade. You're giving up an all-round versatile console for a superior, more authentic experience in two specific areas, Nintendo DS and Tate mode. You're also getting a flawed but acceptable experience with some lighter Android games as well. This, then, is for the DS enthusiast who's weighed the alternatives and decided that a native touch experience is a must-have. It's for the gamer who finds the dedicated layout a better value proposition than the raw power of the more expensive console or original hardware. It's for the vertical arcade fanatic who wants a dedicated pocketable device. It's for the deaf, dumb and blind kid who sure plays a mean pinball. And it's for the collector who appreciates unique, focused hardware. So would I recommend it? Yeah. After going backwards and forwards on this device after getting a 2D XS, after spending an excess of money on a 2DS XL just for a couple of B-roll shots. Did I mention my poor financial planning? I found the MagicX Zero 40 actually won me over. On paper, the logical argument for other devices is so much stronger, but spec sheets don't capture the actual feeling of using this device for playing DS games. I kept reaching for this, that vibrant screen making old games feel new again, and the Tate mode experience is genuinely good. The MagicX Zero 40 isn't the most logical purchase. It's an emotional one. It's not a flawed all-rounder. It's a resounding success as a specialist. And in a market that is obsessed with everything machines, that's quite refreshing. With that said, a future version does need to have a larger screen, an improved D-pad to be a real original hardware killer, and a bigger screen model that was 3DS-centric, even if it was more expensive, would probably sell incredibly well to people wanting that kind of experience. But for now, this is possibly the best option. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this journey through my questionable purchasing decisions, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more gaming content, where I spend my money, so you don't have to. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.